All right, welcome back, everybody. Such a great pleasure of having this person on before, and she's coming in again to talk about this important issue that's going on out there. There's so many layers to this thing that it defies just simple explanations, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted her on. She's got her own show on YouTube. You guys you've seen her reporting all over the place, and the Red Letter is a great Substack out there. Read Tara Palmeri. Welcome back to Black on the Air. It's so great to see you again.
Thanks for having me, Larry. It's a pleasure. I'm so happy to be back.
Yeah, and it's so nice to have you here. You're one of the people I feel you're really plugged into this whole Epstein issue and
Yeah.
what's going on. I have so many questions. I'm so confused on a lot of it. And I was hoping I can have you on to just kind of help us kind of weed through some of this and figure out like what exactly are we watching? Like what is going on here? And I know you have your perspective on this. I know is very layered. You have a um, both personally and professionally, I'm sure, And first, I want to ask you, what was the purpose of the event with the survivors that happened in DC? Was it Friday or was it Thursday? When did that happen?
It was on actually, I think Wednesday,
Oh,
believe
it
it or
was
not.
on Wednesday.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know. These days,
Yeah.
these weeks, they
I can't keep track of
I
time.
know,
Yeah.
right? Time is
Mhm.
elusive now. So yeah, it was on Wednesday, and the purpose of it was to rally behind this bill that Thomas Massie has put
Mhm.
forward, and it would basically be forcing Republicans to vote to release all of the Epstein files from the DOJ, to compel the DOJ to release the files. And this is it's a big vote because President Trump has simultaneously had his legislative affairs team himself calling around
Mhm.
to members saying, if you vote for Massey's bill, it is considered a hostile act against the administration.
Right.
Hostile act. That
Wow.
that is something, right? So what is in these files that is a hostile act against the administration? Excuse me.
Mhm.
There we go. All of a sudden I got the hiccups.
It's all good.
It's okay. Let me give me one second. But yeah, so it's like it is, you know,
Mhm.
and all they need to get a discharge petition, right? To file a discharge petition. I know Congress is ridiculous with all of
It
these
is.
names,
There's
these
so
legalese.
many,
I
yeah,
know.
procedural things and procedural tricks and getting under
Countermeasures and
this. Yes, exactly.
exactly. So
Mhm.
basically, Thomas Massie drafted this bill alongside Ro Khanna, who is a
Mhm.
Democrat from Silicon Valley. He represents that region. Google
Sure.
some of the richest people in the world. And he's very ambitious. Ro certainly wants to run for president. I can almost feel
Yeah.
it when I'm
I've
around him.
had I've had him on my podcast. We actually went out to lunch and I was
Yeah.
this was before the last election when I was complaining about what was going on.
Yeah. He's a really smart guy, right?
He is. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, good guy. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's really gotten behind the Epstein issue with Thomas Massie, who, by the way, has been on the wrong side of Trump before, voting against
Mm.
his Build Back Better bill, saying it's going to be a huge deficit balloon. Massie is from Kentucky, and he is not
Hmm.
afraid to brush up against Trump. He became
Mm.
allies with Elon Musk in that fight. But, because of that, Massie is also facing, a ton of Republican fire, like in the sense of the Trump's super PAC, they're supporting ads, and major donors are supporting ads that are trying to take out Massie in his district to get a primary challenger who can beat him. The funny thing
Wow.
about Thomas Massie is he's like so far to the right. He's as MAGA as it comes. I mean, it's
Wow.
pretty
Wow.
mag, it's pretty
Mhm.
MAGA to not want to vote for a massive bill that may implode the deficit. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
but regardless, this war has been waging for a while, and this is obviously a serious attack against Trump because he's made it clear he wants the
Wow.
Epstein story to go away. So he only needs five more Republicans to force this bill out of the House Oversight Committee and onto the
Okay.
floor, right? Onto the House floor, so that these Republicans will have to be on the record voting
Right. Right.
against releasing the Epstein files. And he only needs two more Republicans. He has, hold your breath, Marjorie Taylor Greene,
I know. I
Nancy
saw
Mace,
that.
and Lauren Boebert. I mean, a little bit of wackadoodles, the definite wackadoodle. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene is calling out Jewish space lasers, yet she was completely lucid on the Capitol lawn, saying this is not a partisan issue. This is a story about
No,
crime victims and
she
their
was right.
rights.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, whoa, Marjorie, you're making sense for once.
I'm looking back into those space lasers now. I want to
I
see if
know. Is there anything in that? No, I'm kidding. But yeah, she certainly was really compelling,
Yeah.
and it was an incredible day to see that. I felt like we were at a breaking point in this story, but at the same time, you see some of the documents that have been sent from the DOJ over to the House Oversight Committee as part of this so-called Epstein probe, and it's just black lines, all black
Mm.
lines, all redacted, nothing there. There's nothing there. And it's really upsetting to these victims, and not even just victims. I think the American public, they're just like, well, what are you trying to hide?
Hmm. So one of the things I'm trying to unravel, because there's different factions seeming to want the same things, but for different reasons, maybe. So let's talk about MAGA first. So you talked about
Yeah.
Massey, how far to the right he is, and he definitely represents a segment of MAGA that was on this train for a few years now. Like, wasn't Cash Patel and some of these people, or
Bongino, the deputy FBI director,
yeah, they were like promising the release of these. So
JD
what?
Vance,
Yeah, what? Yeah. So
yourself.
what were they looking for? What were they hoping to achieve before Trump got into office with their push for the release of these, from what you can tell?
A cabal of Democratic elites that
Hmm.
are in the or that are in the documents. Um, I think they forgot that Trump used to be a Democrat. Um, when he was
And
best
was close
friends.
to Epstein, was
Yeah, and
very
when he was
close.
exactly when he was
Yeah.
best friends with Epstein, Trump was never as uh he was never really the one saying like, yeah, he did say we'll release some of the Epstein files, but he was never over promising the way these others did. But it's been very quiet. You didn't see a single MAGA influencer at that rally, at that press conference. They
Hmm.
sort of stopped when Trump said enough's enough. Libertarians that have joined the MAGA group that would have probably been more like Bernie Bros, sort of the politically homeless, they still want it. But those that are truly like Trump evangelists and just believe everything he says, they are given up on this. And that's sort of an interesting facet in all of this is that it does seem like some of the pressure has sort of lifted for him, um,
So, so
politically
who
at
are
least.
these Republicans now representing? Your Marjorie Taylor Greene, your Manchin. Like, who are they representing? Like, what do you think is motivating them to do this? Could it be actual justice? I mean,
One would hope. I think they believe that there is a uniparty actually out there. I
hmm.
believe this is a class story, honestly, Larry. Like I've always felt this way.
Hmm.
This is a story about the ruling class, the elites, the heads of
Hmm.
institutions, banks, politicians, foreign dignitaries, princes, kings, presidents, um, and against the children of the poor, essentially. And
Hmm.
I really have always seen this story that way, and why there is just a two-tiered justice system. And I know, I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate to this feeling
Hmm.
that there's justice for some, but not for all, right?
Hmm.
And I think the scope of the victims, 1,000 victims according to the FBI, a sweetheart deal that meant that he only spent 13 months in a state prison for procuring a 14-year-old for prostitution, suggesting that a 14-year-old could even be a prostitute. You know,
Hmm.
um, the fact that he was able to commit a crime against one of these girls while wearing an ankle bracelet
Wow.
under this 13-month stay in a county jail with work release. The fact that nobody understands why this case went all the way up to the Attorney General of the United States for review. A
Hmm.
sex trafficking case in which a prosecutor in U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta's office, who worked on the case diligently for years, recommended 65 charges of federal sex trafficking and went down to 0. There's just so many questions about how this injustice could have happened. And so many girls went to the FBI, went to parents, going to the
Hmm.
Palm Beach police saying their daughters were lured into this man's house, this
Mm.
50-year-old man's house, when they were 12, 13, 14 years old. And a lot of people say, oh, the girls that were on the steps of the Capitol, or they seemed older, they must have been in their 18 to 20, 21, 22. And what I say to those people, there were a few girls who were teenagers that were there, like Courtney Wild, who showed up at Epstein's house with braces. I mean, he created a Ponzi, not a Ponzi scheme, excuse me, he created a pyramid scheme in a high school to get all these
Hmm.
girls to come and bring their friends. And I say to them, the girls that were molested when they were kids, um, it has been so difficult for them to come out. So many of them have chosen to remain in the shadows. There have been so many suicides. I mean, we
Yeah.
know of Virginia because she was one of the most prominent survivors, but it
Right.
is too difficult for them to speak about it, the shame that they feel. They were so young. It affects your frontal lobe, it affects your
Hmm.
development in life to be sexually abused so young. And they don't have that same sort of strength that the older women, the older girls, as you might call them, they were later teens or in their early 20s do, and they speak for them. But the
Yeah.
truth is, this was a high school that was raided. This is
Yeah.
a serious story, and it's not a hoax. It's like it's a if you wanted to like sob for 5 or 6 days, just read through these files.
Yeah.
Parents, coming forward. Some of the girls were going there because they thought they were making more money than their fathers going to
Right.
Epstein,
Absolutely.
you
It's the
know?
ultimate just exploitation of people with nothing and giving them, I mean, from his standpoint, so little, not even a dent on anything, just these little crumbs and, being able to control these young people is just crazy.
The thing that really disturbs me too, Larry, I've got to say this, is that when Epstein got out of prison, not
Hmm.
prison, excuse me, jail, because jail and prison are two very different
During
things.
during that first, did he go to
Yeah.
jail? It was it 2008? Is
Yeah,
that what you're
2008,
talking
when he
about?
he
Okay.
went to county jail. Okay.
Okay. Wow.
No, he should have been locked up for the rest of his life.
Oh,
When he returned,
absolutely.
yeah, when he returned from county jail, he went back to his $20 million townhouse,
Yeah.
went back to hang out with Bill Gates and various other prominent luminaries.
Yeah.
Um, he continued to hold dinners to convene luminaries from all over the world, to give money
Hmm.
to MIT, to Harvard, to continue to live the life of luxury that he had always lived, flying around on private planes and continuing to live
Hmm.
this life. And so many people like the Prince, Prince Andrew, and others, even prominent people in media, spent time with
Hmm.
him. Women
Yeah.
that were prominent women spent time with him. And he was brought right back into the upper echelons of society, oh, the 1%, as if he had done nothing at all. And
Amazing.
that's the heartbreaking part too to me, that I don't think anyone really quite understands, is that he was not seen as a pariah. And I think, like, where you and I come from, if someone had just gone to prison for being a pedophile, I don't think they'd be welcome on our block,
No, no,
right?
no, not at all. They wouldn't be welcome in prison,
They
you
wouldn't. They
know?
die. They usually get killed
Yeah.
in prison.
Those people get
Pedophiles die.
shivved like right away. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And but yet he could easily mingle in some of the highest,
Amazing.
highest levels of power, is what still continues to confound me to this day. Um, and it's just a rot in our system. I mean, Ro
Yeah.
Khanna kind of said it perfectly on the steps of the Capitol. There is something rotten in Washington. And I
Hmm.
know he was referencing Shakespeare, but
Sure.
he and Thomas Massie said, like, this story is because the reason that the men on the list, the men that are on the victims lists, the reason that their names aren't being called out right now, and the reason that the people inside the House of Representatives and inside the Senate aren't doing anything about this, is because it's their wealthy donors that are
Hmm.
on the line. It's because it's the power structures that are on the line. It's because it's the machine that feeds the swamp that is on the line right now. And if you really want to drain the swamp, you release the files. And it goes back to Trump. Drain the
Yeah.
swamp. You want to drain the swamp? Release the files.
Well, Trump is the swamp. That's the
It's his
thing,
swamp
you
now. It's
know.
just his
Yeah,
alligators, right?
absolutely. When did you know this infamous trip to Africa that supposedly Bono was on and President Clinton? I don't know if Bono was on that, but President Clinton was on. Uh, I think one of the ladies that they were on that trip. Did that happen after 2008 or before?
I thought that was 2004, but I might be wrong. Let
It
me
was
let me look that up really.
2004.
I don't know
Because
if
I,
that's
I want to
right. You
know,
know what?
like, what events happened after 2008?
So many. That's the
Yeah.
other crazy thing. Let me just actually look that up before we say that Africa. What year was that? 2002, 2003. Yeah, so
Okay,
it was
so that was
before he went to
early
prison.
on.
Yeah.
Right, right, right.
But again, a lot of the way that Epstein was able to break into these upper echelons of society to spend time with
Hmm.
Bono, presidents, was because he was willing to give money to various foundations. He gave money to the Clinton
Right.
Foundation. He would give money to prominent institutions. He laundered his name through these institutions.
Hmm.
So, I mean, what is the value of money, right?
Exactly. That's the lesson in all this too. My goodness. I mean, really is that golden handshake, really. It's
Yeah,
like
it's dirty money. It's a dirty
it really
exchange.
is. So what has already been released? Let's go to the Pam Bondi thing. So she promised to release quote unquote everything, whatever that means. That what did she actually release, if anything?
A lot of documents that are just black, 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 like redacted. I mean, like kind of what you could see right now. I mean, you can go to the FBI's website right now into their
Hmm.
vault where they hold a lot of the documents around cases and go to the Epstein files and you can look at them. You just can't, it's just hard to read. It's just all
Yeah.
blacked out, white boxes. There's nothing
What do
there.
you think? What do you think happened with that? Do you think she genuinely was going to do something and was stopped, or do you think, she never really had any intention?
I think she does whatever Trump tells her to do.
Okay, so you think she probably was going full steam ahead, like, oh yeah, this is what everybody wants.
Well,
Oh,
not until she told Trump you're in the files.
uh-huh.
You remember that happened? Yeah.
So, so you think Trump told her stop?
Yeah.
Okay. So we already know Trump was friends with Epstein. So it makes
Yes.
sense
Yeah.
that,
It was already out there that he was in the
right,
Black Book. He had traveled on the
exactly.
flights. That there are
Okay, so by
pictures
in
together,
the files, so what does in the files mean that it's different than that?
stuff that we haven't seen before.
And that would mean.
There, I don't know. I knew that that's the golden question, right?
But do we think that, like, I'm not sure about this, honestly. I don't even want to insinuate. I have no idea, Like, Trump is an odd character anyway. I mean, we know he has, trysts with hookers and that type of thing, and, cheated on his wife, so him with prostitutes isn't a stretch. We know that's already happened, or him in those situations where he's paying for sex or whatever. We know that that's the case. The
This is a pedophile, though. A little
Yes,
different.
exactly. That's the different issue. So,
Yeah.
you know,
No one, I
uh,
mean, there was one girl that accused him of this, Jane Doe called Katie Johnson, but she dropped the case before the election. She
accused
accused,
Trump.
yeah, at Epstein's townhome, but she dropped the case before the election, citing intimidation. I actually interviewed Michael Cohen about this because he was
Mm,
Trump's fixer at the time, and he sent out a private investigator to find this Jane Doe. You can see it on my show. It's the Tara Palmeri Show, and you can see it on YouTube or on my podcast. But yeah,
hmm.
I definitely, or on my Substack, The Red Letter, but I grilled Michael Cohen about that and what happened with that case because it was right before the election. She claimed as a 13-year-old she was raped by him in um, Epstein's townhouse. Um, Trump denied it. Michael Cohen said that Trump told him it was bullshit and he sent out a PI to try to find her. I said to him, why, you're sending out a PI to try to find a Jane Doe. The point of being a Jane Doe is to be anonymous, right? You do that to protect your identity, not to have an investigator identify it. Because that's very commonly used in these cases to intimidate
Hmm.
and to, private investigators, they are used in these cases to try to dig up any dirt on these women that would make their character, question their
Right.
character and who they
Sure.
are. So,
Right.
or just to identify them and harass them. Like I remember
Yes.
one of the victims, Courtney Wild, she said that there was at one point, there was a PI that was trying to run her off the road. It was like terrible.
Hmm.
And she was up against Epstein. Yeah.
So if the so with the DOJ, with the files that they have, would clients be listed in these files, or would it just be like the operation itself and what Epstein did and all these things? But what do you think there'd be an actual list of names in there? Because
No, I mean,
to
I don't think
me,
it
there
would
may
be
not
like,
be.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
no, there would be because sorry, excuse me. The
Mhm.
list, I've been trying to explain this to people, there's no client list that
Right.
Epstein held on to, but
Right.
they're all in the files at the very least. The girls, I call them girls, but they're my age now, the
Sure.
women, in their court documents, set their depositions that are in these files, they name the names of men that they were trafficked to. Um,
Okay.
and that would be in there. Right now they're redacted, but they would be unredacted. For example, like Virginia Giuffre's court documents are entirely redacted, and there are a lot of names of men that she's been trafficked to in them, and it's just been redacted. Um, there's might be, I was told that there's surveillance videos
Hmm.
and that there are even pictures of like bodies with men over bodies that they have. This is from one Virginia who said that she went to the FBI with her lawyer at the time, Stan Pottinger, to see if she could identify herself in those pictures, but she said none of the girls were her, and when she was looking.
Hmm.
So we have to assume that they have a lot of they have document like photographic evidence and also just testimony from survivors about it. Um, but are we ever going to see that? I don't know. And in the case of Virginia,
Yeah.
yeah, she didn't see her own body, but I've got to assume that they have a lot, and not just assume, but based on my conversations with senior law enforcement, that there's a lot of information that they're holding on to. 300 gigabytes, and we've seen 1 gigabyte, and it's all redacted. So,
Right. Do you think Epstein was murdered?
yes, I do actually. I always have. I know that's
Who?
weird, but
No,
I do.
that's okay. Who, like, I'm the last to get
I'm
on
not trying to
conspiracy
sound like
trains. No, no,
QAnon, but
no, no, I know, I know. Well, I'm the last to get on conspiracy trains, but I always say, well,
I like
let's,
to live in the world of facts as a journalist, but
sure, absolutely.
I just have this feeling having followed the story so,
Hmm.
and it is a feeling, and there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that you just can't explain. Guards
Hmm.
asleep, missing minute, um, the fact that his neck was broken in 3 places, the fact that he
Hmm.
wasn't the type of person to kill himself. He always believed he could get out of jail. He boasted about his connections. He even said to Brad Edwards, one of the attorneys that I interviewed, he said, Trump's my boy and Bill
Hmm.
Barr is his. Nothing's going to happen to me. Like he really believed he was untouchable.
Hmm.
I also believe he had been an informant to intelligence services for a while. So I think that he had felt that he had sort of he had value and that
Hmm.
he had some that would be used in some way because all the way back I think in 1996 the Financial Towers case where it was the largest Ponzi scheme in the country at that point. It was a $400
Hmm.
million Ponzi scheme with Stephen Hoffenberg. His partner was Jeffrey Epstein. Stephen
Hmm.
Hoffenberg spent the rest of his life in prison for that when he was during this case, and Jeffrey instead was an informant,
He
and
was a snitch.
yeah, he was a
Yeah.
snitch, and he
Mhm.
never went to prison. And so
Hmm.
I think his relationship with the intelligence community started then.
Okay, so you say yes, he had a relationship with the intelligence community. So Like, does that, when we say the intelligence community, FBI, CIA?
Yeah, I do think that. Yeah. I think he spent a lot of time. We know in that case he helped the prosecutors, but I think that he spent so much time with high net worth people, with foreign dignitaries. I mean, he literally said he used to brag that he was advising Vladimir Putin. How is that person not valuable to the CIA? He used to talk to African dictators. He was friends with
Mhm.
MBS. He was, even just look at the pictures of him with all of these people.
Wow.
He um
Do you
Prince
think,
Andrew, how would he not be valuable? I mean, the CIA,
right,
for example, would never compel an American to give them information. But if that American wanted to volunteer that information, certainly it's going to put them on the a good side of the law. It's very similar to like the Whitey Bulger case where he was helping the FBI while killing people. And
right,
it's not always
right,
like a gun.
right, right,
Yeah,
right.
it's
No,
not always a
that's
gun to
true.
your it's not
That's
always a
true.
gun to your head type of relationship, right? It's
Mm.
with the law enforcement. Often at the end of the mob movie, it's the Don that was the informant all along. So
So you're
I
saying, I just want to be clear about this, that, or maybe you're not saying this, but the CIA was well aware of his trafficking with young girls, underage girls, but turned their heads because he was a valuable asset to them for other reasons.
I can't say that for certainty, but I can say that like I know that I know okay. So during my reporting for a podcast that I did on Jeffrey Epstein called Broken Jeffrey Epstein, I
Hmm.
interviewed a lawyer for one of the victims. His name is Brad Edwards. You saw him on the steps of Capitol Hill. He's been a lawyer for a lot of,
Long
for
time.
yes,
Right.
exactly.
Hmm.
And Brad, um, as part of his work, trying to argue that the non-prosecution agreement, that sweetheart deal, was invalid, he interviewed a lot of people, and one of them was Jeffrey Epstein's bodyguard of 5 years, Igor Zinoviev. And
Mm.
um, while he was in that state jail, Igor went to Langley, which is the CIA headquarters,
Hmm.
to pick up a book for Jeffrey and a note that was brought back. And Igor came back and Igor recalled this to Brad and said he's a very important person there. And we know even from his diaries that were FOIA'd, there was a Freedom of Information request for Jeffrey Epstein's diaries. And in there, he had meetings with the CIA. We also know that he met with Bill Burns when he was the deputy secretary of the State Department, and State Department and CIA work very closely together. In fact, like a lot of diplomats are actually covert CIA
Mm.
abroad. So um, I also think, again, he would be very valuable to them as a hyperfixer type. Like he
Hmm.
could provide information, he could help connect various agents abroad. I don't think he wasn't like a CIA agent. They couldn't run him. He was an American citizen. You can't do that. I also think he probably gave tips to a lot of other agencies as well, like Mossad, MI6. Like I think he was a kind of guy who was wheeling and dealing in information, and first of all, that could be used as blackmail,
Hmm.
helped him with his financial business to get people to invest in him. Because let's be serious, he wasn't some like financial savant.
Right.
I think it allowed him to play both sides of the law for a long
Hmm.
time. And yeah, I think it helped him with his deal. I do. I think that having that relationship,
Where,
even if it wasn't a direct CIA intelligence relationship, even if it just goes back to the to financial towers and the fact
hmm.
that he helped the FBI with that, I'm sure he continued to give them information. There's one document in the files in the vault that shows that he gave the FBI and some sort of information in exchange to get his assets returned to him. What information? We don't know. So,
Would any of that information be in these Epstein files,
oh
or
yeah, for sure.
really?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's all blacked out, that whole
Hmm.
document, but all we know is that he gave information to get his assets returned that were seized. But we don't know, exactly what that information could have been. But
So, do you think then, if you say you feel he was murdered, then the, to me, it's got to be CIA or some organization that murdered him. It can't just be, you know. I mean, somebody had to have a really good reason to do that, right? Like who had
It's
that
not,
good
I don't
reason?
necessarily, I actually also don't necessarily think it was CIA, FBI that murdered him. I
Well,
think also,
who would have
I
had
think
the motivation to do it
I think
besides?
one of the wealthy individuals that he was friends with that know that he may have
Hmm.
had like maybe would have tried to again get let loosen his like lighten his time by um selling out one of these men, maybe perhaps telling the FBI or CIA, giving them information on various cases they're working on, like giving them in exchange to lighten his sentence. I think he knew a lot of information. I think there are a lot of people that wanted Jeffrey Epstein dead, not just the
Hmm.
intelligence services. And they could have paid someone in that jail to kill him.
Hmm. Wow.
Like
It's
I do
always
think that
no.
there's
Mm,
a there's the 60 Minutes did
mm,
a piece on this like about 5 years ago, 2019 or 2020. They did a really great piece on this about a cop from Nassau County who's
hmm.
also in the prison and how they think he may have been paid to kill Epstein.
Hmm.
I know but that's sometimes
I
how it's done. It's an inside job, and then suddenly that cop gets has like the family of that police officer lives in some mansion later on, or gets a boat.
right.
It's kind of that sort of thing. Um, but yeah, it's crazy, right? I mean, we live in
It
this.
is interesting. Like I said, I don't jump on that conspiracy train right away, but this one I have to leave the door open because I've heard too many things that sound like maybe, but I always say the execution of it isn't always as easy as people think that it should be, you know.
No, no,
And
no, and you also have to do it like that's why I think it was an inside job. Like I don't think there was like some sort of uh and people get killed in prison, like we were saying, like pedophiles get killed in prison all the
yeah,
time.
they do. Yeah,
But
they
this
do.
was staged just if he was killed, it was staged to look like a
But he was
uh,
isolated, right?
yeah.
Epstein?
His
Right.
business partner, Jean-Luc Brunel, also mysteriously, this is the guy who was his business partner in this MC2 modeling agency that they had together.
Hmm.
He also mysteriously died in a French prison by hanging.
So I don't want to sound
Oh, and
macabre
also
here.
Ghislaine Maxwell's father mysteriously died falling off the side of his yacht named the Lady Ghislaine. And Ghislaine, even in those tapes with Todd Blanche, says she thinks her father was an intelligence asset. He knew Jeffrey
Yeah.
Epstein, and she believed that he was killed, and that he was a
Yeah.
Mossad asset. So
Okay, so here's my macabre follow-up. Okay, so why
why aren't they
has
asking us to do this, Larry? Probably because we do this all day
yes,
long. No, I'm
exactly.
joking.
But why is Ghislaine Maxwell still alive then? Because she was the closest person to Jeffrey Epstein. If anybody shares the secrets, it's her. As you just stated, if her father was some kind of asset, you know, she's that's a lot of things tying her to sensitive information that could worry people out there. How is she not only still alive, how is she in a nicer prison environment than
Well,
she
she's
was
on her way
before?
out, and doesn't it seem clear that she's on her way and
It
she's just
seems like it.
yeah, she's figured her pathway is just to keep quiet. I mean, um, Jeffrey was a talker. There was no way.
So you thought there's a threat that Jeffrey was going to talk, which made people want to kill him. But with Helene, she's not going to talk so she can live.
Yeah. And when she does talk, she's going to say the right things, right?
Right. Well, so far, yeah. Do you think Trump's going to pardon her? Like
Yeah,
on his way out?
I
Like
do.
his last act, he'll pardon. Ah, man. Ugh.
I think he'll pardon Diddy too and George Santos. Like he'll do
Really?
it all
Why?
in
Why
one
did
sweep.
he?
Because like he likes Diddy, they were friends, and also the not just that and George Santos because it's not just like about whether he likes Diddy or Glenn or he was friends with Glenn. They've been friends for a very long time, like since she was very young. But it kind of it kind of blurs the lines, right? Like it creates
Yeah.
this moral like obscurity and oh, well, if he pardons George Santos, who was just using his campaign finance funds to buy Sephora makeup, but then you also have like Diddy, and then that's a different story than the Glenn, than Glenn. It's all like
Hmm.
the moral lines are so blurred, and it would create such a a three-pronged news cycle, right? Like I think
Yeah, yeah. Lump it all together.
let's clump it all together,
Yeah,
pardon everyone. It'll be a huge news cycle. Which one do you lead with that night? The pardoning
I
of the
know.
land? I mean, if you're a news guy, like which one do you lead with?
Well, let
Probably.
me let me ask you this. I'm just going to do a side tour on the Diddy thing just for a second. We'll get your
Hmm.
perspective on this. I don't believe what happened is correct justice, let's say. It seems weird to me, like the thing that I think he should have been prosecuted for, and I'm sure there are reasons for, was obviously that videotape that we saw,
Yeah.
uh, you know, beating up uh, you know, just that act itself to me is worthy of going to prison. But the act of paying someone to go to a different state, an adult, consenting adult, this man act, which is so out of date to me, and to have prison time for that, where there's no like coercion in this, or it's not like trafficking or that type of thing, where we would understand that, I don't understand this. I don't understand
It's
what
I
that
understand.
was.
I'm like I get that too, but I think when prosecutors put a case together, what they do is they try to win, right? Like that's the whole point. They waste
Right.
all this time, not waste, don't get me. You know, in their minds, it's like they know that they have a like fiduciary duty to prosecute a case and win. So they're going to choose the easiest charges to prove. And so
Hmm.
that one they probably thought was the easiest charge to prove. And like, I don't know, it- there's, and I think with what we saw in that tape, which was horrific, um,
Right.
juries are weird. Do you know what I mean? But
But
you can't take away from the fact that like, but that helps the case, right? It helps to create a narrative, which is what you also need on top of all of it. But when it comes down to like when they're talking to the jury and they're like, all we needed to say was they brought this person to that place or this you know what I'm saying? And it's so
hmm
easy factual. I think that's how you kind of convince juries to vote one way or another on your charges. And so,
yeah, and what it says about the justice system is like we just feel this person needs to go to prison, and we don't care what the charges are ultimately.
yes, exactly. Exactly. But we want you to feel a certain way about him
Right.
regardless to for
Right.
a bit. Yeah. No, it is. I mean, it's very archaic, but like that's sort of how it works, right? It's always interesting to see what people actually end up going to prison for and what they actually
Hmm.
do, right? Um, but that was a real the crime was heinous crimes and
Yeah.
Poor Cassidy and what she had to go through.
Absolutely. Like I
It's
said, he should have gone to prison for that videotape alone.
yeah.
Um, are you concerned at all, like when this whole threat that they made about, you know, the Trump people threat about his people, but just the way that the system is set up now with Trump's DOJ in place, like doing things for him, specifically the way the Supreme Court is stacked. I mean, it seems like if something really happened to you, Tara, is there really a road to true justice these days? I mean, I don't know if there is. I mean, like when I look at the women standing there, I'm like, where are they going to get justice from truly in this particular time right now in 2025? I don't see the road.
I don't either. Although I will say it hasn't for the past few decades, there hasn't been justice for them either. And that's been over numerous
That's true.
administrations. This
That's true.
started
Yeah,
long ago.
that's true.
Uh, so I do think if the Congress changes hands, I think that would at least offer some balance. Because
Hmm.
right now you have you've got, the House, I'm sorry, you've got Congress, you've got the presidency, the Supreme Court all stacked in a conservative favor. So there's really
Right.
no balance. But if the Congress changes hands, we know the Senate probably won't. But if there's even just like, you know, a fourth of power
Hmm.
it'll still be heavily weighted towards conservatives, but there'll be at least a little bit of power
Right.
on the other side. And um, they'll have subpoena power, the Democrats, if they choose to use it. I mean, I keep saying this, Larry, to a lot of people having known this case and worked on it for a long time. Like, it doesn't make Democrats look good either.
Right.
it's not a good case for them either.
Yeah.
But it's the old guard, and they are at 27% approval rating. It's not the worst thing, I guess, to clean out, but
Yeah.
it's not
Do
a
you
great, yeah, it's not great for them either.
do you think this could potentially hurt Trump, like the one thing, because he's kind of been impervious to, I mean, he's the one that said he could shoot somebody in Fifth Avenue, and he hasn't been wrong about that in terms of
No, it's actually true. I know. I don't know because like I don't know if his I don't know if his base cares anymore.
right.
What's your sense?
It's tough to it's such a good question because there was a crack there where it seemed like it could make a difference, you know, where it seemed like for a second there, MAGA was feeling a little betrayed, like, whoa, 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 you know,
Yeah.
is there a lemon law here? We can we can talk about, what's going on. We were deceived. It seemed like that was in the air, and it seemed like Trump himself shut that down and everybody fell in line,
Mm.
and as you say, it kind of just went away with all these other things.
Yeah. It does feel like, I don't know. I think as long as it's in the press, I do know that more stuff is going to come out because of journalism.
Yeah,
And
well, Trump calling it a hoax. Okay. So
that sounds like, yeah.
Well,
Sorry, I
they
didn't mean to
all
cut you
no, Tara, because they always do this thing. Here's what Trump does. He says something that sounds like one thing, but then you need all the Rosetta Stone interpreters to tell you what Trump really meant by it, right?
off.
So, and that's how Trump gets away with really meaning two things, where what he really wants to convey to his people is that the actual thing is a hoax, you know. But what we're supposed to believe is that he's saying the Democratic attack on it is a hoax, you know, or
Yeah.
something like that. So what is your take from that statement? What fires are being put out by that?
I mean, it sounds like what he says when he's always under attacks. It's a hoax, they're fake, they're this, they're that. And I thought, um, there's nothing there. Like I have heard that a lot from people, even Democrats saying to me, like, is there anything there? 'Cause they know I know a lot about this story. And I was
Hmm.
like, well, what's there to you? Do you know what I mean? Like, is pedophilia there? Because like that seems like there's something there to me. Um,
Hmm.
when he says Democratic hoax, it sounds like he's trying to say that this is just a political game, which it has
Hmm.
become, frankly. And I was really happy that the survivors showed up on the steps of the Capitol to say, like,
Hmm.
no, we are not a hoax. We are people. We are here. And that to me was really powerful. And it was a reminder that it's not a hoax, that they're real people.
Hmm.
And so that's important. Um, but yeah, I mean, he's just fighting for his life. And yeah, this is the one story that won't go away, right?
Right.
Because it does involve real humans. It's a crime scene. It's a
Hmm.
crime. Like that's the thing. It's a crime against people and real people, not a hoax.
Right. And it seemed like the survivors that were speaking, it seemed like they alluded to the fact that they may gather together the list of clients themselves and release that. Is that possible? Do you think that's going to happen? Are they serious
Yeah,
about
I
that?
do. Although I later on that night though, Larry, I was with a lot of the survivors and they're terrified about that idea.
Mm.
They
Hmm.
they've been through intimidation. They don't want to have this, they don't want to have targets on their backs now. And it's not
Hmm.
just from the Trump administration, it's from the men too. I don't think people quite understand the level of intensity behind the forces behind this story to try to keep it quiet. It's not just Trump. There are a lot of people that want this
Hmm.
story.
Are they afraid, like, if they release names, they'll get sued immediately?
Yes,
But
definitely defamation suits.
okay.
And we live in this crazy time. I mean, Trump just sued the Wall Street Journal for $10 billion for reporting on the birthday card. That is most likely in the discovery of the Epstein case. And so, yeah, no, he denies it, but again,
Hmm.
it's the Wall Street Journal. They have got really high standards. And they were also able to like the birthday book is definitely it would definitely be in the files for sure.
Right.
But this is like it's terrifying the times we live in right now. And Virginia
Yeah,
lived it out herself. I mean, she was in a brutal, brutal lawsuits with various
yeah,
men trying to shut her up. And she killed herself ultimately. She lived a
terrible.
really hard life. I mean, it was really sad.
And didn't she actually win the thing against Prince Andrew?
Yeah, the
Like, did
only civil settlement
right?
the crown has ever paid. Isn't that incredible?
And she's but this is what people should know the irony of that. And took her life after even after that, when
Because
you
it's a
th
painful
yeah,
process.
I know
And she
it's
was dragged
terrible.
through the mud.
Yeah,
Dragged through the mud. Do you remember that interview though that he did
yeah.
with the British news channel?
Oh,
He
it
was
was ridiculous.
horrible.
No,
He
it's
was horrible.
terrible.
It was
Yeah,
disgusting, right? It
it
was
really
so,
was.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
do you think this could be the one issue that could actually bring people together?
I believe it. I believe that there is a uniparty of people that believe
Yeah,
in justice. I do. I hope so. I
I
think
hope so too.
if there like, I know populism is often used in a negative term, but it's like,
Hmm.
I do think there's a undercurrent of feeling that in this case, the elites are certainly trying to quash a story
Hmm.
that the people want to know about. And I
Yeah.
sense that. And, if Trump was really the one who was supposed to be the slayer of the elites of the establishment, like this is certainly a story that just is all about the elites, all about the establishment and keeping the status quo happy. There's a book, actually, I don't have it with me right now, but it's in another room. It's called Credible. And it's about why we in society, we put the credibility bias against the accusers and
Hmm.
towards the powerful. And it's in a way, it's up to the accuser to be credible, right? Not
Hmm.
the people who are being accused. And it's like how in society we we want to keep we have a bias towards keeping people in power,
Hmm.
allowing them to continue to live entitled lives.
Yeah.
And this is a real reckoning moment, I think, in terms of that. I mean, we just went through the Me Too movement. I think a lot of people wondered, was that good for women or did that set us back ultimately? You know,
Hmm.
um, and I think this moment is a reckoning. And, do we always side with power? Is that just our bias as human beings? And then you add in this other layer, Larry, which I've thought about a lot because
Hmm.
I've heard this directly from survivors, but there is a certain sort of pain in
Hmm.
knowing that the person who abused you is celebrated
Yeah.
and continues to be celebrated.
Hmm.
And I mean, you saw that with the Bill Cosby case, right?
Oh
Harvey
yeah.
Weinstein,
Hmm.
Prince Andrew. Yeah, like when the person who abused you is celebrated, it makes it even more difficult and you are disregarded. And, there have been so many brave people who've come out, like Anita Hill and Christine Blasey Ford and so many others. And, but they go away,
Yeah.
after they're done, they tell their truth. The world rejects them. They choose the power structures that as they are and they go away. And I think what was really special about Virginia, but ultimately took a toll on her, was that
Hmm.
she didn't go away for so long. So many of those survivors of Epstein would not be there without her. She
Yeah.
was one of the first ones to come out and tell the story of her abuse. Without her, like this, I don't know that any of those women would be out there. And it's sad that there has to be a martyr sort of in every story that goes away. And
Yeah.
sadly, her version of going away was taking her own life. But, um, this is an endemic problem, and we have to like have a reckoning in our society over why we always side with the accused.
Yeah.
You know?
There's a, I agree with you. It's so eloquent what you're saying, I think so many people, we live in a meme society and a slogan society sometimes, and people attack a slogan and sometimes they destroy an actual important movement, So like
Right.
when people said believe women, that's all it said, people changed that to believe all women and then attacked the change that it never was. It was like the same thing with
Mhm.
Black Lives Matter. People changed that to only Black Lives Matter and then attacked the change that they made as calling it irrelevant, you know.
Right.
And it's like I hate when that it happens all the time. And so then
Yeah.
it creates a wedge in these issues where Believe Women to me came around because that was not happening, where
Yeah.
powerful men were believed all the time, you know. And
Right.
finally, people go figure, believed women for once, in that situation,
Right.
who, as you say, it's a class issue too. It's power versus non-power is what those situations really are, especially when you reverse, when you have someone like Elaine Maxwell, who's a woman, it's still a power thing, of controlling younger women and that sort of thing. So to me, that type of sloganeering, I hate when it undermines the actual issues, and people, it's like, all
Yeah,
right,
and there's always the drama,
yeah,
the dramas around it.
yeah. It's like, okay, throw the slogan out. Stop saying it then. How about we
Yeah.
just believe this case? Let's talk about this case. How about these
Right.
particular people? What's
Right.
wrong with believing what they're saying? There's so many of them. Uh, it just really frustrates me, So one thing I always try to do is give a platform for this. So I really appreciate you being on and talking about
No,
it.
I
Uh,
appreciate you being so thoughtful and wanting to talk about it because I know like you care about you care so much about so many different things and you platform so many important issues. So like I really appreciate your work and
no,
what you
it's my
do and how
pleasure.
thoughtful you
I
are.
I saw my old pal Gretchen Carlson on TV this morning talking about it, and she was on my show, on the nightly show. I've had her on the podcast, and I really admired her because, she was going against Fox News at that time, and that headwind is not
Mhm.
easy to go against, and the powerful people there. And she's been a strong advocate, of all these things, and you know, um,
Yes, she has been. It's
yeah,
hard. And I
it's
think there's
tough.
this
It's not easy. Yeah.
the power structures as they are, they just don't, you know, you need to have a person who's going to come out. We're, I think for a lot of these women, their livelihoods are on the line, their safety, their
Hmm.
family, their security. And
Yeah.
it's to go up against power, it's to sort of jump into that those dark waters and not know where if you can swim against the storm, and that takes
Mm.
really powerful people to be willing to be willing to do that. And there
Right.
have been powerful people in history who are willing to do that.
Hmm.
But you are almost sacrificing yourself in the
Yeah, I
process.
know. And it's tough. It's a tough ask of people. They have lives and children, and still they have dreams still in their lives, and people, some of these powerful people have no problem just crushing them, like it doesn't even matter, So, um, I want to thank you for being on, Tara, talking about this. I know it's difficult for a lot of people out there, so I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
guys on this issue. Just one last thing. Do you have any predictions about any of this? Do you think we're going to find out any more, or are you cynical about it or hopeful? Where are you?
I think the more you tell people, look away, the more likely that the truth will be revealed. I've always believed that.
Hmm.
I'm not religious really, but I do believe that
Hmm.
all that is sort of hidden will be revealed. And there will be great journalism from this. More will come
Mm.
out that will keep the story alive. I know that it was
Okay.
not alive for a while, but I think that the fact that they said case closed, and I was even hopeful as a journalist when I would talk to my law enforcement sources that they were still working on this.
Hmm.
Um, I think that more will be revealed because the more you say, look away. I mean, like me, I'm like I can't stop. No, like
That's why
I'm
you're
gonna
a journalist, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I know more stuff is going to come out soon. There'll be more.
Hmm.
And Virginia Giuffre's diary will come out. Her memoir will come out in October. That's going to be
Oh,
really explosive. Um, and I think that'll just continue the national interest in this story. And I hope that people will continue to support the truth seekers and the survivors and the people who platform them like you, and and that we'll all be protected as we seek for justice. So yeah,
great. Well, thank you so much, Tara Palmeri. You guys, thank you so much, Tara, for being here and talking about this important issues. We're going to keep following you out there in the
thanks.
road, whether it's Red Letter or your great reporting,
Yeah, thank
whenever you
you.
pop up on TV. It's always great seeing you. Thanks, Tara.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Larry. Bye.
Mhm. Thank you so much.
I want to thank my producer, Eric Abinate. Adam Stewart, who handles my thumbnails, and Abby Baker on my social media. If you want to support my independent journalism and get my scoops straight to your inbox, please sign up for the red letter. You can do that by going to tarapalmeri.com. That's TARAPALMERI.com. You can obviously share this with your friends, like, subscribe, leave a written review. I'm not backing down. I'm back from my vacation. I feel so much stronger. Thank you to all of you who have sent me notes. Just turned 38, and it's going to be 30 great. And I really feel positive about what I am able to accomplish with this community, what we can all do. And I appreciate all the tips and everything you've sent to me. And of course, I'll be in DC on Wednesday, so check out my social media. I'll be on MSNBC. I'll be on Nicole Wallace's show. I'll be doing a live on Substack with Terry Moran. You can go to Substack. I'm on there at Tara Palmeri, and I'll be live from the Capitol. So check out all of my social media. Check out my podcasts, everything. I will be there. Twitter, X, whatever they're calling it now. I'll be back again soon.